Hi, this is Miss Monk coming to you with a podcast about Harry and Meghan. Of course, today we're going to be talking about engineering a better world. The podcast is a little different in that I'm not focused specifically on Harry and Meghan, but instead more about the subject that's near and dear to them. And by following their lead to highlight and educate, I'm doing my small part to keep the light on their priorities. So it's not a podcast episode that's on the lighter, entertaining side. It's a little heavy, but just giving you a warning up front. I started working on the podcast the day before the U.S. election. I dropped off my ballot over a month ago and had already gotten an email that my ballot was received and later that it was processed. So I wasn't worried about the lines. But as I waited for the results, I couldn't focus, and I knew it would take several days. However, the collective anxiety on social media started seeping into my mental space, and I was trying to be calm and logical. It meant I couldn't hold a thought long enough to finish this podcast. Finally, it's over. At least this part of it's done. Joe Biden has been declared president-elect. And while one side is exhibiting death throes of an authoritarian administration, the other side can begin to breathe and celebrate before the world, leading up to a great unifying speech on Saturday. One of my brothers in England was texting me every day, stressing over the results as if he was living here and had to deal with the outcome. And I suppose being in England, he would have to deal with whoever was going to become president and who was going to also be dealing with Boris. So he was caught up in the addictive nature of this drama. On the other side, I had another brother who lives in Georgia. And he had been excited about Georgia turning blue for the last 2 years. And every time he said it, I'd roll my eyes like, yeah, right. You step one foot out of Atlanta and you know you're in the South. So he felt pretty vindicated by the results of the election. So we're on to a fresh new era at the tune of 75 plus million people rerouting this ship called America to hopefully calmer waters so we can get real social and economic progress for a better country, a better world. And that's my optimism talking right there. As again, I celebrate President-elect Joe Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. And as a reminder, Biden is an ally and, dare I say, friend to Harry. So I can't wait for them to meet up again and for them to meet Meghan and, of course, Archie. So this is just going to be great. So weight is lifted. I'm sleeping better. I'm ready to rock and roll through this podcast that I've been working on for feels like a week. On that note, we take a dive into Harry and Meghan's recent engagement with Time 100 Talks that fits perfectly with the consequences of the digital age on our lives. On October 20th, 2020, a special edition of Time 100 Talks had a day-long focus on engineering a better world, facilitated by the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. So we can take a look at the crap happening around the world, and there is a common denominator that has influenced these events: social media and misinformation. How many videos are there of a racist yelling at a marginalized person to go back to their country? Of looters and arsonists during the Black Lives Matter protests who turned out to be racist and provocateurs? Or anti-maskers taking a stand in Walmart? Or a country using tech to block transmission to hide their inhumane actions, like in Belarus, Nigeria, Iran, or Saudi Arabia? And a lot of the momentum of these situations came from the help of the digital platform. So to prep for this, I watched Netflix Social Dilemma because I know that Meghan had watched it, and she had brought the person who created the documentary to the Time Talks. I read Algorithms of Oppression, How Search Engines Reinforce Racism by Sophia Umoja Noble, who is part of this discussion also. And I read Caste by Isabel Wilkerson, which is not about the digital world, but about the hierarchy in the US, its origin and current status as a reason why America is so divided along racial, socioeconomic, political lines, and all the other identity silos that we exist in. And I strongly recommend that you read and watch the mentioned titles at your leisure. For tight budgets, like mine, I have 3 library memberships, and I borrow ebooks and audiobooks, which is how I usually enjoy my reading. So if you have budget issues or you're in a lockdown and you're looking for something else, try your library. And when you read Caste, which was an Oprah Book Club pick, you might need a stiff drink or a long meditative period to digest and hold on to rational thought and action and not rage and weep over man's inhumanity to man. And as I said before, the overall election cycle in the US provided a backdrop for the topics that we're talking about today. And it was too easy to be dismissive and tolerant of the deluge of misinformation because it's nonstop, it's exhausting to be vigilant. But until the tech companies can get a handle on it, they are either complicit or not investing enough to stay ahead of it. We, the users of these platforms, must protect ourselves. If that means that you don't automatically retweet something without some fact checking, then so be it. If that means that you don't have an account with a particular platform, then that's what you do. If that means reporting an account that violates a rule based on the platform's standards for engagement, then be the social media police. But not to stay educated on what's happening and not being proactive to protect your space will be to your own detriment. And collectively as a society, that level of detriment is unsafe. Look at the young killer who left his home in one state to gun down people in another state because of enticing posts on social media asking for guards against the protesters. Harry and Meghan have boldly stepped up to this strange unfolding landscape of the digital era because for all its innovations and breakthroughs, there is a deep and seemingly dark sacrifice to our humanity. And that's not being overly dramatic once you do your own reading and research. So Time had recognized Harry and Meghan for their efforts to make online communities kinder and safer. It sounds simple, but we'll see that it's anything but. And I'm glad that they're tackling this global issue that is changing so rapidly. The couple prioritized their commitments to this cause because they connected the dots that what they had done individually had a common factor, which was defined by the use of digital space. Meghan saw that her work on women empowerment and young girls' self-worth needed to have a protected space, while Harry, recognizing that mental health gains do come from social media platform because it is a refuge for some. So understanding that digital misinformation hampers progress and snowballs from the online space ending up into our physical world, for example, climate change, where there's huge misinformation about this, means that we have to pay attention. The media's role is important in everything going on in the world. The trust that we put into the media and the digital platforms are sometimes undermined. And their partnership, Meghan and Harry, with Time magazine, is to get to that truth and to make it part of the equation because of the amount of information being thrown at us, the users. Harry and Meghan are actively trying to understand the nuance of what a person's experiences online. And frankly, they found it overwhelming. They started with professors and experts, defectors from large platforms, even neurologists, to sharing a goal to make the space healthier, to better view it through a holistic approach. Remember when we'd heard earlier in the year that they had a meeting with Stanford University? Well, it was with Tristan and Sophia Noble on this subject of defining what are the problems and finding solutions. Their goal is to get people to listen to experts as to what is happening affects the world. We have the crisis of hate, mental and physical health, and misinformation, and it's not restricted to certain platforms. So they wanted to bring together this wider group of experts from various backgrounds to talk, strategize, and network among themselves. And Meghan led off with Alexis Ohanian, a Reddit co-founder of this multi-billion-dollar company. And in his words, it has a lot of influence, especially in the US. And the discussion started with the fact that he had resigned and asked the board to give the position to a person of color, specifically someone who is black. Why? Because he was inspired by his daughter, Olympia. Of course, her mother, his wife, is Serena Williams. And he mentioned how 4 months later, after making this decision, he's still getting hate mail. But that lets him know that he's made the right decision. Gosh, doesn't that sound familiar with Harry and Meghan, especially Harry, with what he has done and getting the hate continuously for it. And when Meghan asks what he has done or why he did this, he said, when Olympia is older and she asks him what he did to make her life better, he feels comfortable that he can answer her, that he took this deliberate act for her. So he shared that Reddit had banned a lot of communities built around hate, but he knows there's more to be done. Companies are more successful with more diversity for the broader range of ideas. It's healthy for the boardroom. It's healthy for the most junior positions to have diversity, not only of color, but of thought and experience, because it affects the content that is then brought up on the platforms. Alexis said these platform creators, like him, look the same, similar education experience and background, and that created blind spots. But already he's seeing change that is happening, that the current generation of company creators have a broader perspective and no longer look like him from his generation. But I'll interject here to say that it's still a heavily male space. So come on, ladies, get those companies going. So Alexis goes on to say that you have to be deliberate about creating the right culture within an organization. Smart investment in people and the organization will reap huge dividends because you have more voices in the room when making simple product decisions, because well-intentioned people may miss the opportunity by leaving out a demographic or by offending a demographic. And how many times have we seen that where, I mean, let's bring up Meghan with her recognizing that ad from Procter & Gamble was sexist. And more than likely the people around the table did not include probably a woman or enough women around that table. Growth and revenue are tied to the toxicity on the platform. Only when it's a business reason to deal with the toxic buildup does it occur. Companies have to think about trust and safety of the users. Meghan brings up trust and safety of moderators and employees, referencing a YouTube employee who was suing for PTSD because of how much toxic stuff they're exposed to on a daily basis as part of the job. Because for everything we see, and we may get offended about the moderator for a particular platform is seeing probably 10 times that every day, all day. Companies have offloaded, according to Alexis, he said that companies have offloaded a lot of the moderation to other countries who may not necessarily know the cultural sensitivity of a particular issue. But whether it's here or overseas, they're still pretty much dealing with having to go through vile stuff. But he says, in spite of everything, the good outweighs the bad. And we'll keep hearing that refrain throughout this podcast and throughout this talk. We're highlighting the bad stuff, the heavy stuff, the things that make you want to just close out accounts and just walk away. But again, the good outweighs the bad. So Meghan said to that comment, the bad can be so loud. We haven't begun to realize the legacy and effect that is being done to us on a deeper level. And when she said that, I felt like she was letting us know again how much toxicity she is dealing with every day, and it's probably why she isn't online and doesn't have an account, but that the damage from what she has gone through is done. It did go through, it's sitting in there in her, and I'm sure she's getting over it and she's in a much better place and so on. But that line, the bad can be so loud, we haven't begun to realize the legacy and effect that is being done to us on a deeper level. So in this dedicated space to Meghan and Harry, we have seen the toxicity. We have endured attacks from others and witnessed the misinformation campaign that is still ongoing by supposed mainstream outlets. So we can understand why this issue is so important to them. Alexis goes on to say, you have to de-radicalize a generation in America for feeling left behind, but who found kinship in dark corners that normalize socially toxic behavior. We've heard about those silos with, these racist men who are so misogynistic and so on. And he feels that historians will find the paper trail as to what caused this, but there is a need to reintegrate these folks into the cleaner, safer part of the online space. Me personally, I'm a little afraid of reintegrating anybody whose thought pattern went that off to the deep end. I'm not sure. I feel like they need therapy or something more so than just being reintegrated. But again, this is a gift and a curse because we can commune online just as if we were in the real world. We create friendships online just as if we were creating friends in life. And I know with Meghanpedia, we are getting to know each other online, and we have never met, may never meet, but this community brought us together, and we have a shared interest, and we find out about each other, and we celebrate each other. Just like Maria had her birthday a couple days ago. So happy birthday, Maria. So it's real. Creating bonds with strangers over a common thing is real. But the curse is that you can use this bond in the darker parts of the platform to recruit vulnerable people and bring them into an extreme toxic environment. So before you had to leave your house, this is what Alexis is saying, is that before you had to leave your house to find or join such a community, like you had to put effort into it. But now you can just stay home, and with a couple keystrokes, you find these communities, so there's ease to getting into trouble, basically. The statistic is that 64% of people joining Facebook toxic groups is because it was recommended to them. So you may not have intended to go, but the algorithm sent you there. The big question is, how do you use the positive points of online space to empower people when 64% is saying that things were recommended to them that they were looking for? Alexa says these vulnerable people have a distorted reality, shaping opinions that you don't realize you're being manipulated. And his example was that if he owned a beer hall, like drinking beer, he says, I can create the environment and determine who I want in the hall. As a private company, you can decide with rules, with defining the culture, with a variety of things to make it a certain space. And it's within the rights to say who can and how to interact in that space. So he said, for instance, in the beer hall, if somebody got drunk, you were saying, okay, you're drunk, you're too drunk, you can't stay in here. The same thing with the platforms. You can set it up so that you have a strict code of behavior. And when you violate it, you are told to leave. He objects to the term platform because of the impact of how much it informs. So the word platform apparently seems to give these companies this gray area where they don't have to abide by certain rules versus if they're considered media organizations. Although we say it's social media, but they hang on to the word platform. And why it matters, because under the term media, there is a responsibility close to as if you're a journalist that these companies don't want to tread. They're claiming that they're only platforms and that basically they're not educating and they're not agitating and they're not influencing and they're not entertaining, which we know all of those things are false. The next session that was on this talk, this day-long talk, included Tristan Harris, who was the creator of The Social Dilemma, which is a Netflix documentary, and he's co-founder and president of the Center for Humane Technology. And it was also Sophia Noble, who wrote a book about algorithms. And his question is, how do you wake up from the matrix if you don't know you're in the matrix? How we make sense of the world and make choices based on social media, heightened because of COVID. When the algorithms don't have our best interests at heart, how do you wake up? Technologies are already in use for the existing structural racism online that adds speed and scale to those toxic messages. Just think about how something goes viral. Within an hour, a manipulated photo of Joe Biden had gone viral, and it had like over 1 million views before it got taken down. There is power and potency because the harm shapes behavior that is acted upon. What's highly incentivized is the speed through which the worst kind of content can flow. Sexism and racism sells. There's a profit imperative. Facebook is worth $725 billion. The accounts are free. They maximize you on the platform by promising posts will go viral. They monetize your attention by promising that what you post will go out to all these people. And that promise gets people excited. But it doesn't reward what's true or credible for society. So Meghan asks, what is the solution and the accountability? Can these tech giants self-police? The quick answer is no, they can't. More like they can, but they choose not to. Public policy and regulation are actually crucial to the conversations about how business is conducted. Many governments have to contend with consumer harm and protection on products or civil rights models. Techs can't regulate themselves because they don't take any action. And this is Tristan talking. It's more than putting down the phone or logging off. The inhumane violations are part of the system, whether you participate in it or not. Just as with the people in Myanmar who were persecuted. They weren't on Facebook, but it still resulted in them facing life or death circumstances because of the misinformation that was posted about them. Companies can't go against their unchecked morality with their growth at all costs set as their core DNA. Because what that's saying is that at the core of a tech company is growth at all costs. It is hard to have that on one side and then telling them to check their morality. One is going to get sacrificed. Tristan refers to his website where there is a page called The Ledger of Harms, and it's a list of things that have been affected by social media. And we have this whole thing about when a problem pops up, that's when it gets it, and it gets the attention, that's when it gets removed. So unless you make noise about something, most times it'll just keep going and keep building and so on. So instead of having a practice where they can go back over what was false, correcting it, letting people know that this particular information that was already posted was false, they just would remove it. And Harry's point of this was removing it doesn't change the fact that people saw it, read it, absorbed it. It's already made an imprint. And he feels that there should be something where the companies go back and said, you know that article that made 5 million views or likes or whatever, it was false. Or it was found to be false, and you put that out there. There is no redressing for things that have already gone through. And I know when he brought up this point that he's probably referring to all the things that have been said about him, his wife, his family, that were out there. People made their comments, posted things, and the platforms let it go, even if he objected that it's false. There's no correction. So you can agree that this is some heavy stuff, and it's just easier to push those buttons on our social media accounts and not think about the machines grinding away behind the curtains. And Meghan says, what is one thing we can do today? And Sophia Noble, she said, vote for policy and for people who are aware and truly willing to intervene on your behalf. We are born into these systems. Policy shapes the environment. The challenges are why people can't disentangle from disinformation. That's the challenge. Why can't we disentangle it? Because so much of the public democratic counterweights, such as schools, universities, libraries, public media, are where the public gets educated. And the tech sector, who doesn't pay taxes or their profits are offshore, they defund the democratic educational counterweights. And that's a lot of words, just basically to say that the governments have taken away funding from the important things, like public libraries, public media, even schools and universities. They have less to work with. Then in comes the tech platforms, and they are going to provide you with your entertainment and your education. They're going to give you their version or a limited version of what they think you're interested in. And so they become in part supplemental to your education. What we need is governments to go back to reintroducing funding and resources so they aren't just relying on Facebook to get the news out. My daughter had deleted her Facebook account and she wasn't interested in the platform, and this was when by the time she had done her bachelor's. So when she applied to the University of London for grad school, she had to create a new Facebook account because that was the primary way to communicate among the students. And that's where you got your information, instead of having a forum that was run by the university, or if not run by them, and a separate entity, but only for the university students, versus pushing your students and pushing that large quantity of people onto Facebook. In Sophia's book, Algorithms of Oppression, it's a pretty in-depth study on the power of algorithms and the way that the digital decisions reinforce oppressive social relationships and enact new modes of profiling. And so, like I said, I read most of the book. I didn't quite finish it yet. I still have it on my Kindle. But first things first, algorithms are created by humans. The same humans who work for companies like Google and other Silicon Valley tech companies accused of a variety of gender and racial inequality offenses. So why would they make neutral search algorithms when they are anything but unbiased in their work environment? In 2011, the search for black girls came up with a porn site. So what she's saying, that in that little box on Google, when you bring up google.com, she would type in black girls and a porn site would come up. And this was in 2011. After she wrote an article about it, by 2012, the porn sites weren't in the first series of results for black girls, but still was for Latinas and Asians. So it showed that pushback works, but that means that the search terminology was specifically designed to be this way. In 2015, the U.S. News and World Report reported that the glitch in Google's algorithm led to a number of problems through auto-tagging and facial recognition software that was intended to help people search through images more successfully. It automatically tagged African Americans as apes and animals. The Post reported that Google Maps searched on the N-word. If you searched the N-word on Google Maps, it led you to a map of the White House during Obama's presidency. And the digitally, my words are just not coming out today, but you all just hang with me. And the digitally altered photos of Michelle Obama with a monkey's face that was widely circulated through Google Images in 2009 still have digital traces in Google's auto suggestion that associated Michelle with apes as of 2015. Protests from the White House forced the image down from the first page. So not forced it off, forced it from the first page. Google's position was that they are not responsible for its algorithms, and when faced with a backlash, they issue apologies for any offense it may cause. Sophia said she tested the search term gorillas on April 7, 2016, and it still shows a black couple. The N-word house still leads to the White House. I didn't check it here in 2020. I did some other checks, but I didn't do those. Her point was that racism and sexism are part of the architecture and language of technology. So, January 25th, 2013, she ran a test asking, and in quotes, why are black people so? And you know, the search prompts, it'll fill out the prompt on the Google page, search page. So for why are black people so, it came up with, why are black people so loud, so athletic, so lazy, so fast, so tall, so mean, so funny, religious, ghetto, rude? She did the same for black women. Why are black women so angry, loud, mean, attractive, lazy, annoying, confident, sassy, insecure, bitter? Why are white women so pretty, beautiful, mean, easy, insecure, skinny, annoying, perfect, fake, rude? October 21st, 2013, the UN launched a campaign directed by an advertising agency using genuine Google searches to bring attention to sexist and discriminatory ways in which women are regarded and denied human rights. So the search terms that when they used was women cannot. And what automatically came up was women cannot drive, be bishops, be trusted, speak in church. Women should not have rights, should not vote, should not work, should not box. Women should stay at home, be slaves, be in the kitchen, not speak in church. Women need to be put in their places, know their place, be controlled, be disciplined. The response about this campaign was that the users were the problem because it's their search that makes it rise to the top. So that's what Google said. It's because you're searching for those specific things that's making it rise to the top. But Sophia insists that the blame lies with the algorithms that drive certain results to the top. Have you ever noticed, if you look at Twitter, they'll have Twitter trending topics. Some of those topics don't have a lot of views or whatever it triggers, but yet it's in the top list when you're on there. That means they're manipulating it, because something may have 20,000 views or likes or whatever, and something else has 1,000, but the 1,000 is in there. It may be number 3 or whatever. So how is that possible? Unless you are manipulating what we will see. And I noticed, for instance, like the K-pop stuff, because of BTS, they know that they'll get the younger K-pop generation people. They know that it brings a lot of attention. So you'll see things there when you may have a day of disasters, right? We have maybe a hurricane and a war and whatever, and then it's this randomness of somebody in K-pop and with not enough views, but it's on there. So what I did after I read this bit from Sophia, I decided to try some terms. So I searched for beautiful, and I looked at the images that it automatically brought up. And it was women who were mainly European or scantily dressed and seductively posed. All I said was beautiful. On the other hand, I just typed in ugly, and it resulted in a lot of women, some people of color, and people with facial anomalies. Looked up professor style, and it was mainly white men. Regardless of what a user is asking for, Google had created a problematic framework and notions to fulfill the user's requests, often with paid advertisements pushing a certain narrative. So I wanted to check on a couple searches, and I said, why is Meghan Markle? So this is 2020, this is me searching. And when I said, why is Meghan Markle, it came up with Why is Meghan Markle famous? A duchess and not a princess, called Duchess of Sussex, estranged from her father. Why is Meghan Markle important, influential, an ex-royal, speaking with a British accent, a duchess? So I was checking to see if there was any racial insulting language attached to why is Meghan Markle, but I didn't find any. So by 2020, Google had figured out how probably to fix this. I tried, is Meghan Markle, and it was, is Meghan Markle still a duchess, still married, a British citizen, and so on. I typed in, how does Meghan Markle? This one was pretty interesting. The fixation. How does Meghan Markle straighten her hair, make money, leave suits, get straight hair, do her hair? How does Meghan Markle and Prince Harry meet? How does Meghan Markle stay in shape? How does Meghan Markle straighten her hair? How does Meghan Markle and Harry make money? And then I typed in, could Meghan Markle? And it was, could Meghan Markle run for president? Could Meghan Markle return to Suits? Could Meghan Markle be expecting twins? Could Meghan Markle become president? So I was pretty happy to see that nothing other than some of the crazier ones, but nothing offensive, truly offensive. So as if that wasn't enough, I learned that there is a courtroom sentencing software called Northpoint, used by judges for risk assessment to determine the alleged future criminality of defendants. Guess which racial group or gender was predicted to perform future criminal activity? So if a black person or a white person was committed the same crime and they were before the judge, I guess the judge uses this software, inputs the stuff to figure out their future criminality. I think, what is it, Minority Report with Tom Cruise comes to mind, and this spits out the risk assessment. Well, of course, the black person is considered a greater risk than the white person for the same crime, possibly the same background. But this is another way that algorithms work against you. The exchange of service for you getting these free tools and services, like the search engine, like email, like YouTube, they profit off of data mining. It's difficult to intervene because the methods are proprietary, and access to the math and science methods won't be easily understood or identifiable. So what to do when the protocols favor corporate elites or has been studied to sow social inequality in financial matters? This is where these experts that Meghan and Harry have brought together, the professors and the defectors from the tech companies, they come together because they have the knowledge to know, hey guys, this is what's happening. This is how we're doing it. Kind of like the whistleblower. They'll tell you what's happening. Diana Asher, in her dissertation on yellow journalism and cultural time orientation in the University of California's Department of Information Studies, she said she found a stark difference between headlines that were generated by social media managers from the Los Angeles Times and those provided by automated, algorithmically driven software, which generated backlash because those type of headline or tweets were more likely to be racist and misrepresentative. Again, doesn't that sound familiar, considering the constant barrage on Meghan? And we know hundreds of articles come out against her or about her. they're not necessarily generated, the headlines are not necessarily generated by a person. They could be generated, as they said, through this AI software designed to get you angry, designed to make you talk, designed to make you share it. They know they've got the Sussex Squad and whatever the other squad is called, and they probably put things out there to generate the clash, because the clash makes their stuff gets noticed, it gets picked up, it gets elevated. So this is very heavy stuff. So Tristan Harris wrapped up his talk with a bit of advice. That's the social media, the social dilemma creator. And he said, extractive strategy of these companies have gutted the mainstream newspaper. So the race for clicks decreases the value and has created a less educated citizenry. So we are less educated because we don't have a wide variety of media to pick from. We get it, the same article is floating through all the platforms. He does have a webpage called Take Control to gain back, telling you how to gain back sovereignty as a community and individual. Sophia's reminder again is that there is good too, because the Black Lives Matter movement was galvanized because of social media. So we still have agency to use these platforms to amplify the right voices. It's not an either or situation. We just have to be critical and thoughtful. Meghan concluded with, we know what it feels like to know the pain and suffering, along with the joys of being in an online community. And considering that we are now raising generations of children who know nothing else but being photographed daily for their parents' Instagram posts, or learning in a digital space because of COVID, or seeing society celebrate or implode in live time, and the uniqueness of forming bonds with strangers, all the while getting our information and entertainment from this limited number of platforms. This is our reality. It's both a fantastic time, but one in which we have no idea the depth of the negatives. The defunding of our educational sources will continue, and we will have to take the initiative to seek a wider breadth of knowledge. I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer, but I don't see the tech companies with their current leadership being the vanguards of social responsibility. Seen too many pictures of Zuckerberg shaking Trump's hand. However, we don't have to throw everything out. That's not the point. But we as the end users need to demand of our legislators and of these companies that there is a level of transparency, protections, and a place at the table in the shaping and maintenance of this digital world. So, do your due diligence, stay in the loop with Harry and Meghan, because I predict that they're going to continue elevating this relevant issue, especially now that they have a friendly administration that would at least listen to their concerns, which should be ours too. So this is Mish Monk signing out. Thank you. Bye-bye.